All right, live. Hello, hello. Dope Trades in the house.
How's it going, everybody?
So this is actually my first attempt at doing this live. Last time I recorded it with someone, so I hope nothing goes totally wrong. But yeah, guys, everyone, welcome to Crypto Mushroom, where we've started a new podcast series, and I'm extremely honored to have Dope Trades on as my second guest of the series. Dope Trades, please, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, first off, uh, thanks for having me. Glad to be here. A lot of guys that know me. Well, there's probably a lot of people that don't know of me in the crypto world, at least. And then there's probably some that do. But I basically have been trading for what? I think I made my first trade ever in 2009. I bought 100 shares of City stock when it was like $2 or $3, and had no idea what I was doing, and ended up losing like 30% and got out immediately, scared. And then I never really took a trade again for a few years. And then I got more into stocks, into options, and then eventually into Forex, and then eventually into futures trading, which is primarily what I do now. And then ended up getting into a little bit of crypto, but at the moment, it's not really a big part of my trading anymore, or has really ever been. But so that's probably where a lot of people know me from, though, is oddly enough through Crypto Traders TV live stream on Twitch. It's kind of how all of a lot of this started, with them just doing an interview with them, kind of off the cuff, and here we are. So I've been trading about, I guess you'd say, actively 7-8 years. And
how old were you when you started? When you bought your first shares of?
See, I was in my early 20s. I'm 34 now, so I was that had to be like 2009. So what's that? I was probably early 20s, maybe no older than like 25, 24. And then a few years later, I kind of started getting a little more serious and kind of taking it more serious. And then I like a lot of guys in the U.S. is where I'm located. I think you said you're in Thailand right now. Is that right?
I am in Thailand, but I'm not Thai. I'm from Denmark. Actually, I'm.
Okay.
My parents are Pakistani, but Pakistani immigrants, and I grew up in Denmark.
Okay. Okay. Cool. So a lot of the guys in the U.S., what I found is, I think they either find, well, so they find stocks, and then I think what happens is a lot of those guys, they find out that they don't have the 25,000 that you need, to kind of skirt the pattern day trade rules. And so they end up getting into stocks, which is kind of what I did, because when I started, I didn't have 25,000 to start. So they get into options, I should have said, because you can get a lot more leverage, more bang for your buck.
More gamble.
Although it's more gamble. Exactly. It's it's easy to over leverage with options, but you learn the hard way. You get involved, and I still trade some options to some degree. I sell more options now than I'm actually buying puts and calls, or I'll sell premium on certain things, and then occasionally it just depends on the circumstance. But a lot of guys get involved with that, I think, because they don't have that the account size and enough capital to do it, and then or they get into Forex because you can get into Forex with pretty small amount of money, which is
I've never really understood options 100%, and I'm sure like a lot of people who have never really traded but got into crypto probably don't really know that much about options either. Is that, could you explain options a little bit more, thoroughly?
Options are kind of similar to futures trading. Options are a little bit more complex, and there's a lot of strategies you can do. But essentially, what you're doing is let's say you're, just to dumb it down to the basics. Let's say you own 100 shares of Apple stock, and what you could do is you could sell premium, or you could sell the rights to someone else at a premium, let's say $1,000, or whatever number. It doesn't really matter, but they're basically paying you to own your stock for a month, and they're doing it, or whatever time you whatever timing that you agree to. So it's a contract, right? So
Right.
you own 100 shares of Apple stock, and then I say, well, Alex, I want to buy the rights to trade your stock, or not really even that, it's the rights to buy your stock at a price we agree on at a later date. So if I'm right and the price goes to where I think it's going to go, then I have the right to buy that stock from you at that price. So, but you don't. Most options never get to that. They usually expire, and there's no. It happens, but the majority just expire. The contract expires, and people just use it as a vehicle for trading, and they do it because they get so much more leverage without having the capital requirements that you would need to, say, own 100 shares of Apple stock right now.
Right.
So it's beneficial for them. It's a little more complicated, but it's a lot more dangerous, I think.
I've heard that selling options pays off like decently, though.
Yeah,
selling and buying.
Yeah, so it's the big boys and the institutional guys. They're the ones that are selling. Selling options typically requires that you're going to have a larger account size, because what will happen is, say, like, you sell, let's say you sell a put, and you're essentially you're betting that the stock is going to go higher. But if it goes lower, you run the risk of having to actually buy the shares that you created the contract for, whatever that number of shares is, and then you have to give them to the person that you sold the put contracts to. So that guy is going to buy those shares from you, and you're going to end up buying them for more and selling to him. So he's getting the deal, and you're losing money. So,
all right, okay.
So it gets a little complicated, but that's kind of how options work. Not most people don't. The vast majority of your traders, though, they don't trade options in that way. But so what happens is, because of that, like I said, most of the retail traders that are using options that have smaller accounts, they're just using it as a vehicle to make directional trades. And then the bigger guys with more capital and bigger accounts, and the institution guys, they're selling those contracts to the retail guys. And then basically the idea is, well, most of those contracts expire worthless or near worthless, and they profit the premium. So maybe I have, say, like 50 grand, and I decide I want to sell premium on Apple, and I sell, I don't know, let's just say 10 contracts. You're going to pay me, say, $1,000 for that 10 contracts, and then 50 grand probably wouldn't be enough. But in that event, if nothing happens, at the least I make, the most I'm going to make is whatever you paid me. So
right.
That's the maximum I can make. And then if it expires, and that's, and the time frame might be a month, but honestly, options is not really a big part of what I do anymore. I'm mostly just directional trading, futures contracts, and some forex. But I kind of use the forex, the futures currencies, or the futures of forex currencies. So you can trade, say, the euro dollar, but you can do it with futures contracts, and it's similar to options, but it's not. It's much simpler. It's more directional. You don't have to worry about the time decay and all the things that come with options where,
Mm.
in the formula of how they're priced. So, yeah, it's totally different. A lot of crypto guys probably aren't very familiar. Do you even know if there options for any cryptos, any of the exchanges? I don't know if you can buy them, or maybe binary options, but
I
I'm
mean,
not real
there's,
familiar.
I mean, there's on BitMEX, there's like the up and down contracts
Mhm.
for Bitcoin. I guess
The
that's
futures,
kind of
right?
similar. Yeah, for futures. Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically the same thing for your futures. Same exact premise, I guess.
Well, let's go back to the beginning a little bit. So you started out just kind of like trading a little bit, didn't know what you were doing, and how
Right.
did you get to the point? Like, uh, you know, show us, tell the story about your process on how you actually like learned to trade, and what things that you experienced as you were learning, and who you learned from, or whatever strategies.
Uh, well, I started out just like pretty much everybody else. Um, especially a lot of your listeners, I'd imagine, since you're a crypto channel, you probably have a lot of crypto listeners who are kind of probably new and getting their feet wet into trading.
Totally.
So they're probably going to relate, but pretty much everyone goes through the same process unless you have someone kind of snatch you up early on and show you the ropes, which I never really had. So um, I went through a lot of pain and suffering, I guess, as most people, probably more than I should have and more than most people. But, uh, I started out, the typical, I guess, just like everybody else. What's the typical thing? You go, you pull up a chart, you get your platform, you find the product you want to trade. For me at that time was stocks. And, it's kind of getting an option. So I'm trying to learn a little bit about how it all works. But then, you load up your chart and you're starting to see like all these bells and whistles and moving averages and all these different tools and different
Why
indicators.
were
And
you so interested in trading after like losing initially? Like what drove you towards that?
well, it's weird. I've always been kind of entrepreneurial minded and always want to do things for myself. I actually played poker for a while. I think you used to play poker. You said.
Yeah, yeah.
I used to, back when poker was getting popular. My father was actually a professional, still plays. He's kind of winded down, but yeah, he used to play professionally for 20, 30 years, amongst other things. And so, I kind of learned, and then I realized, it's just like when you're playing, you're spending time playing poker, and it's just such a grind, and you could spend, and then there's no, there's just, you might run bad, and there's just things with that are similar to trading, but I just found trading was a better vehicle, a better option. It was less stressful in a lot of ways. You could control risk in a lot easier than you could. You're looking down at a hand in poker, and you're forced to make a decision where it's going to cost you everything in that everything that you have, say in that hand, versus everything that you have in a trade where, like in poker, you can decide, I'm going to fold, but you lose. And in trading, you can say, well, it's you can sort of it's like you're kind of pulling your chips back. Like, oh, I don't really like this hand anymore,
Mm.
but I can take my chips off and I don't lose. You know what I mean? So once it's a little bit different, which I like that aspect of it. Um, but yeah, so I got involved, just like everyone else, try to learn what's going on. You start searching the internet and you see different people with all kinds of stuff on their charts, and I started reading books. I read, I don't know, countless books, just trying to learn. And then I ended up uh, meeting some guys in New York. One's he's a closer friend that I have now. I don't know if I'd call him a mentor. And he's kind of taught me a few things and kind of helped me along the way with
And
risk.
he was a
And
trader?
yeah, he still trades, still a Wall Street guy. He's an ex Wall Street guy. I think he started as a prop trader, and now he's trading. He went through the motions, and now he's trading for himself. But he's not. he never really taught me how to trade or anything. I mean, he just, we just talk, and I just sort of ended up falling into the very simplified. I just always thought like all of this is unnecessary, like because I always had questions like say you learn about Fibonacci levels, right,
Hmm.
or retracements or whatever you want to call it, and I always wondered. I see how this works, but I have no idea why. And then I would never know, like, well, which Fibonacci retracement are we going to go test? Are we going to test the 618? Are we testing the 5? Are we testing the whatever number? And I
Mm.
never figured that. So I was always, well, why does this work? And then I just spent many years asking that question. It's just like everybody else. You talk to somebody, you read a book, it's a process, I guess. You're just taking everything in and you discard the things that you don't really find useful, and you try to build on the things that or the concepts that you do find useful.
Mm.
And that's kind of how I approached it, and that's
What kind of
what's worked for
systems were
me.
you learning back in the day?
I don't think I learned really any systems. I mean, I kind of, like I said, I just learned uh how it started. I would learn, I don't know. It was kind of all over the place. It's probably why it took me longer and cost me more money. But now I don't know how I would even describe my trading now. Like, if you've seen my style or my charts, they're usually pretty plain. I'll draw a couple levels on them and then just sort of leave it at that. And
Yeah.
everyone's like, "What? I don't understand what you're doing," because it doesn't have a lot of stuff on it. But
No, but I remember when I first encountered you was on Crypto Traders TV. Back then, it was a different name,
Mhm,
um, and I remember I was watching, and I thought it was kind of cool. Being alone at home, it was kind of nice to have this stream going on
mhm.
where someone's talking all the time, and Mike was on there, and then you came on and you were talking about the trend and really giving out some really really knowledge bombs, and I was just like, holy shit, okay, I really need to pay attention right now, because normally you don't pay attention to the stream, and I was like, okay, I need to pay attention, and then I subscribed to the channel because I wanted to see previous videos where you
Right.
explain your thought process. And actually, you were probably the first person who influenced me into looking into only looking at price, and
Mhm,
not because when I started looking into
mhm.
trading, I was going through babypips.com, and I was going through some other stuff. And so, obviously you start learning about RSI and MACD and stochastic indicator and all
Right.
these oscillators and Ichimoku cloud. And I went through all the motions of all the classical stuff and classical charting and stuff. And I was very frustrated with
Mhm.
these things because I kept getting wrecked trying to buy, trying to long in December, trying to long in December and January, trying to long on every time there was a bullish divergence on the RSI and this and that. And I was like, this shit doesn't work, like just kept getting wrecked. And I was like, what is, and
Yeah.
and it was just like, okay, this is just not reliable enough for me to be able to use. And then I started going back to more simple stuff. And when I saw what you did, that I think that was actually was the first time I encountered someone who was only using price action, using price and trend, and that really intrigued me. And I thought, this is great because this is more minimalistic, it's simpler, it's easier. Everything else is kind of noise, and
Mhm.
what ends up happening is, when you're not experienced, is also that when you have a certain bias, you want the price to bounce or you want it to do this, then you start looking for, you go through the time frames. Which time frame does the Ichimoku cloud show support? And you just try to find something that tells you, yeah, yeah, this should
Right.
go up from here. And you're actually the first person who inspired me to start looking into more price action.
Well, I'm glad. I'm glad that you found it. Yeah. So it's kind of funny. A lot of people so the people that know me in crypto, like yourself, or that have seen me, which I don't have a huge following in crypto. Like I got into it really late, if you would even say I got into it at all. But the guys that do know me, so like you had said, for your viewers that don't know who I am, kind of how the crypto scene started for me
Mm.
is I found Mike. I was just curious, looking through Twitch and their streams, and I typed in day trading just to see what was out there, and I ended up was really surprised because I was like, oh, here's a stream with a few hundred viewers. What's going on? And then I started watching, and at the time, they were doing similar to what they're doing now, but it was kind of some people on there that were all over the place with their trading styles, and I was just kind of amused a little bit. And not to say that I wasn't kind of, I wouldn't say, I don't know if I would say I was being a troll, but I was kind of amused. And I started talking, and all out of nowhere, Mike's like, "Well, why don't you get on the air?" And I was like, "Are you serious?" Okay, well, so I got on the air, and never really looking at Bitcoin at the time. Bitcoin was around 15,000. I think that was back in January or February. And I think that they kind of pulled me on the stream in a way to sort of call me out, to say like, all right, you're a troll. Well, then
Yeah,
they're kind
yeah.
of like amused as well. Like, okay, maybe this guy's for real, maybe he's not, but let's just see. It'll be entertaining. Or then again, Mike might have just wanted to take a break because he was streaming a lot, like
He's
12,
on
14
all the
hours a day.
time. Yeah, he's
Yeah,
on
back
all the
then for
time.
sure. So either way, I ended up getting on there, and I kind of start dropping bombs and explaining the process and just like the logical approach to, you know, what is trend. And like you said, you read baby pips, or you read, and not to say that those aren't useful resources. There are, all the free stuff out there is somewhat useful if you know what is useful. That's the hard part, right? Is
Mm.
figuring out, well, what is the useful information and what is the garbage, and how do I get rid of. And I think a lot of traders get trapped when they're going through that motion. Like, how do you know? I don't know how long it took you to realize that, well, maybe the Ikimoku cloud, whatever you were doing with it, doesn't fit your style, or like, how do you figure out that this is not useful to you?
I
So,
had to get wrecked to find out, really.
yeah, and then you take however long that takes and however much money, but most people, then they move to the next thing, which is, well, maybe I should try moving averages, or maybe I should try this, or whatever it is. And they end up quitting because it's expensive and it's time consuming. And imagine, what else? There's not many professions that you can get involved in, and you're gonna lose, month over month for a unspecified amount of time. And then
Right.
especially if you're getting older in life, like, the demographic for traders, I'd imagine, is probably under 40, the biggest clump of traders. So once you get to that age, it's like, what are you doing? Are you going to continue to, you're going to keep trying this, or are you going to go and do something that you can support yourself with? So that's probably what a lot of traders go through, and then they quit. I think that's the
Mm.
biggest reason why most traders don't make it, or that percentage of failure is so high. But so anyways, I get on the stream and I'm telling these guys, I think Bitcoin is going to crash. Here are some targets: 8,000, 6,000, 4,000, whatever. Um, and then so everyone's kind of like, this guy's crazy. Like, what is he talking about? And the next month that, we tagged 6,000 for the first
Right.
time since November of 2017. And then so at that point, everyone's like, wait a second. Or at least that's how I imagine what happened and went through their minds. Was like, wait a second, because I didn't have a website. I didn't have a trading course. I didn't have anything at the time. It wasn't even really an idea. And what happened, so after, everyone's panicking and they're like, well, how did this guy know? So I just started getting overwhelmed with, hey, can you teach me? And it's like, well, I don't have the time to teach all of you guys that want me to teach you, because I'm trading for a living. And, you know, my time is valuable, just like, yours and everyone else's. So, but that's kind of how it all started. And, they invited me back, and then we sort of just formed a partnership, business relationship, and the rest is history. But that's sort of how I got into the crypto world, and I never
Well, that's
really got in. I never really got
never
in.
really got it. No, that's pretty
Uh,
cool. I mean, I was looking at your TradingView account earlier today, just to see some of the things, the predictions that you've made. And I do, I was looking at the weekly chart you did for Bitcoin when we were at 9K, and you're saying, we're going to go down to 5,500 at least, maybe even below.
yeah.
And you know, as I've been studying TA and I've been getting better, I can usually, talk about with some competency, not an expert, but I can say like, okay, I think this is going to happen in the short term.
Mhm.
But I could never, I would never be able to, at least not at this point, be able to say like, well, what's going to happen 6 months down the line, or what's going to happen, how deep are we going to go? And I was thinking about this the other day, like a couple of weeks back, I was thinking, actually like a couple of months back when I was running good in my trading, I was like, oh, I'm doing pretty well, and you start to get confident. And then I realized someone asked me like, well, where do you think the Bitcoin bottom is going to be? And I was like, well, I have no idea. And actually, when I listen to people who, try and talk about longer term stuff, I was like, I really have no idea. So there's so much growing to do.
Mhm.
But I mean, you did predict the how far down we were going to go, and what I wanted to ask you was if you could go a little bit more into detail about how you predicted that. Maybe you could show in a chart or something like that. Like, you talked about trend before, and I thought that's super valuable for people.
Yeah. So like I think the best prediction I made was the like in terms of unleveraged, I think was Bitcoin Cash. There was one from like 1800 down to 200s. It's probably even lower than that now.
Yeah.
There's some crazy ones. But I mean, honestly, I just look at crypto and I was like, man, this is a huge bubble. You could short from almost anywhere and be correct,
Mm-hmm.
but having the foresight to see that, like I missed out on all of the crypto because I was telling a story last night. The very first time I ever looked at Bitcoin, I was dating a girl and she brought it to my attention because she was trying to get involved in Forex, and I was kind of teaching her a little bit of stuff, and she brought it to my attention. I never heard of it. And I looked at it, and I can't remember, it had to be around $1,000 or $2,000, whenever that was.
I think that's funny though. That a girl brought it to your attention. Usually it's the other way around,
Yeah. Well, she knew I was trading and doing Forex trades, and I think she just, I don't know, she was kind of a chameleon. She anything that I liked, she somehow managed to start liking. So I don't know if there's some girls that are like that, but yeah. So she brought it to my attention, and I looked at it, and I immediately said, "This is a huge bubble." But so it was like, let's say it was $1,000, and it crashed literally the next day. I can't make it up. Literally the next day it crashed. I don't remember how much, but it was significant, at least 50%. And then so from that point,
then.
it might have been 2013. Yeah, I think that sounds about right, actually. Yeah,
That's when it went up to 1,200 and then crashed at the end of
yeah.
2013.
It was literally the next day the thing crashed, and so what that did for me mentally though was I was like, well, how in the world could I ever buy this thing? How, because it crashed the very next day, and I'm like, why would I buy this? I don't know anything about it, so I missed out on all of the. I take it back. I almost bought in the 3,000, like the low 3,000s on the pullback back in what was that, like August, September, back in 2017. I almost bought there, and I should have. I guess it's a mistake, but I didn't because again, I was just like, I don't understand this. This is, why would anyone want this? But that's neither here nor there. So anyways, I missed out on all of that. So I wasn't smart enough to get in on the ride up. And I did take some of the ride down. I did trade a little bit, but the thing that turned me off with crypto was the lack of, I feel, legitimacy in terms of exchanges or brokers or whatever you want to call it. There's just, for me, there's you've got like Binance, which is unleveraged and you can't short, and then you have some others. You know, if you only have one-sided trading, that just doesn't do it for me, because I actually enjoy. I think I'm probably a better short, like, you know, down trader, like betting that it's going to go down, like betting. For your viewers that don't know what shorting is, I'm probably better at that, or I'm more comfortable with it. But I don't know if I'd say better, but I enjoy it more. You make more money more quickly if you're right.
That's true. Yeah.
But yeah, I never really found. I mean, I remember the first time I got on BitMEX, and some of the crypto guys, they just thought I was a clown because I was like, yeah, I don't know what cross leverage means. Like, because I'm coming from a futures and forex market background, and cross leverage, and that means you're automatically cross leveraged. If you're trading futures, your entire account is at risk,
Right.
you know, at any given time. So I didn't know what that meant, and I was like, and you know, guys were like, "Who's this clown? Like, what is he talking about?" But
Who's this noob?
yeah, but yeah, I'll turn the camera on there and see if you can see. Just kind of, hold on a second. Yeah, just
let a screen share.
Let me know if you can see that. Okay.
I can, but I'll shut up because we want people to read the chart.
So, you know, this is something I've explained a lot, and you know, it's easy to explain now after it's already happened. But you know, you asked me about trend, and the thing about trend, it's so simple, and I don't want to put you on the spot, so I'm not going to ask, but I'll just say, most people, no matter how good of a trader you think they are, when you ask them about trend, if you sort of expose what, like, their level of knowledge or what they really know, because it's everybody, you know, you can intuitively look at this chart, right, Alex? And you were going to say, okay, that was definitely an uptrend. But when I ask you, what about it logically makes it an uptrend? Like, how do you differentiate between it being in an uptrend and it not being in an uptrend, right? And then you could common sense, you're going to say logically, like, oh, well, you know, price is going down, but are there rules, you know? And then when you start really digging into it, you start really seeing, like, well, maybe you don't know those rules. And if you don't know those rules, how do you know what trend you're really in and what constitutes a trend versus, say, a retracement, right? And you can go and read the free resources online, like Baby Pips, like you mentioned, and it'll give you a very watered down, vague definition of that, which is not incorrect. It's just not as thorough or useful to me. And those were the type of questions that I asked, like, well, how do I know? You know, maybe I'm not trying to pick the top or the bottom, but when certain things happen, it gives me a strong indication that, okay, you are now reversing your trend, because it's like going up a stair, right? You hear that, like, higher highs, you know, those are things, and then higher lows, right? Well, a lot of people get caught up on that, which is not wrong, but at the same time, it's like going up the stairs. How many steps forward can you take, and then to maintain your upward movement up the stairs, how many steps backwards can you take? And really the answer is you should never go lower than kind of where you started from, which is, in this example here with Bitcoin, it was easy to see, if this is your stair step, this is kind of, let me just find the right tool. You know, if this is your stair step, right, you really shouldn't go below the stair, you know? So what ended up happening,
because that's a support level, I guess.
Right. That's where you get support. Exactly. And, you know, you start noticing it never really, like, for example, I'll just clear this out. Like this low here, when we pulled back, did it go below that stair step? No, it didn't. You know, we ended up holding something in there. A matter of fact, even looking more closely, this candle here, it did go lower than this, but did it close below it? Definitely not, you know? So you maintain the support. And that's what a lot of people, they forget about. And, you know, you go on smaller time frames and it looks different, and it becomes more difficult for people because you start having to tie in, say, a daily time frame into the smaller time frames, and you start losing track of trend. Where a lot of people, they focus too much on one time frame instead of looking at how they all work together, which is something it just takes time and practice, and you got to know, well, what's that support that I can't lose? If I want to maintain this uptrend, I really shouldn't be losing support levels, right?
Mhm.
And when you do, it's something I made a YouTube video on it a while last week when I was talking about this, and just to show you the thing that I thought was really cool about it.
But how could you
It's
tell once the market structure changed, like, that support was breached, how
Mhm.
could you tell at that point that it would go down as low as it did?
Well, because what is trend? So there are a few ways. Well, what I did when I said the first time you were going to see 6,000s, right? Then if we go to the weekly chart, just for the on a bigger time frame here, I knew right here there's a pullback, right? And on the weekly chart, when I was looking at this, my thought process was this is the move that produced your high,
Mm.
correct? So it, I was looking at this, I'm like, well, it's untested. And the way the markets work is it's how support and resistance work. You go and test levels of support and resistance that haven't been tested. Otherwise, you wouldn't create a market.
By the way, I just want to make a quick interjection. On my bulletin board that I have in front of my desk, I have a bunch of notes, right? Trading stuff that you write down. Remember stop loss, blah blah blah. And one of them is one of the first ones that I ever made when I was watching you on a stream, and it says this. Let me read it out to you, and
Okay.
you probably recognize. It says, "Price does two things: makes new highs or lows, or it tests levels."
It tests untested levels.
Untested
Yes.
levels. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
And
Like
that's
those are the simplest way. I mean, obviously it's more complex than that, but when you boil it down to the most simple components, that's essentially all price can do. So you have to start developing and understanding what are there rules, or are there maybe not they're not necessarily rules that are in stone, right? Because the markets move and supports break and trend breaks and new trend forms, et cetera, et cetera. But it's a guideline. It's more of how I approach it as an if-then situation. So in this example, right, with how I knew 6K or 8 to 6, whatever I said, 8,000, 6,000, whatever those numbers were back in the day, how I knew was it was this. It was if I'm on the daily trend, which I have, and then I have the weekly trend here, and I'll change the color to red, and then the yellow is the daily trend, right? So I'm looking at it like here's the move. It's actually here. I apologize. The move that produced the high of the trend that I'm currently in. If I want to maintain that upward trend, right, I need to maintain the support that it started from. Well, where was the support that it started from on the weekly? When I go to the weekly. So this is the idea of this is why I said I've been banging my head against the wall telling a lot of the guys over at CTTV, Crypto Traders TV on Twitch and the YouTubes and Twitter and everybody that's asked me, Dope, what's Bitcoin going to do? And I always said, like those charts, you can go back and look. This level right here is extremely important because it is, like I showed you on the daily, it is the trend that produced the high from the weekly, which is why it was so important down here. And you bounced 6,000 points, right? And everyone thought, well, we're going higher now, So, and it's like you can look at, I can look at the Twitters and I can tell who actually really knows what the hell they're talking about, and like who maybe has some knowledge, but they don't. And I don't know everything. Believe me, there are people that are much better than me, but that's just kind of like you can tell, like, well, wait a minute, maybe he didn't look at the higher time frame. Maybe it's not that he doesn't know, he just missed something, which we all miss. That's part of trading. You're
Mhm.
always going to miss something some of the time. You can't be perfect. Your win rate's never going to be 100%. And that's something that as a trader you have to let go of. You have to figure out how to lose and be okay with it. And in doing that, you have to figure out, for me, so most people, they never understand. The hardest part about trading was it's not making money, it's knowing when you're wrong. How do you know exactly when you're wrong? Like if you're trading off a moving average or an Ikimoku cloud, do you have something in place that says your trade idea is wrong, you need to fix it?
Right, right.
So, and that's always the hardest part about, at least I found for me, when you start, you start thinking that you know something and that, your strategy is working, and maybe it works, but it's just part of the game. Like it's just part of doing business as a trader. You're going to lose. So,
I mean,
you need to go ahead.
so
Sorry.
I wanted to ask you a question about the chart. Was that so? Now that you're showing it, it seems a little bit obvious that we could go down to 6K, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
it seems so simple all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm.
But as the price was then coming down and testing these 6K levels, what were you thinking at that point? Were we gonna, go upwards or downwards? What kind of factors are you looking at?
So I remember saying this, my first spot was right here, the 8,000 area, which we tagged. Weekly got a little bit of a bounce back to about 1,000 points, and then we continued lower, and they tested the bottom area of that move that produced your trend higher, right? So like you could consider this. Some people would say this is a blow off top, but it's kind of crazy. Maybe Bitcoin is it's the most insane bubble I've ever seen. I mean, you went from 5,000 or 6,000 to 20,000 in what 2 months? Not even. I mean, that's insanity to me. But that's how I knew, because I don't see, there are levels inside of here. Like there's a level right here, which we bounced off of. But where am I at in relation to the trend? You see, that's the thing you have to pay attention to. You have to understand where you are within the trend to know what's untested and where you're going. And not a lot of people actually get that, I think. But maybe they do. Maybe I just haven't met a lot of them. I don't know. Something that I noticed that a lot of people don't know, that don't pay attention to. But so what actually, to be totally honest, what was confusing for me was I wasn't sure. I thought we would probably come down and revisit this once. I was pretty confident once we took out those lows, we were coming down here, which, you can look at some of the ideas and charts I posted, and that's what happened. Did I know it was going to happen? No, there's no way I know for certain.
I do remember you talking about this back in the day, that if we did break, that we would go,
Yes.
much lower.
And most people probably are like, this guy's a kook, he's crazy, what is he talking about? Like, just dismissed it. Maybe I didn't make a good enough explanation, but in my mind, it's just what I see. It doesn't, whether or not you believe me or care, it's your trade. You trade it how you want. This is just what I think. I'm one guy. I could easily be wrong just as anybody else. It just so happens this time it worked out. But what was kind of difficult for me was, so here on this 58, we'll just call it, this area, the 6,000 area. A lot of people were looking at this wedge that was forming, and I always thought that we were probably going to break down. I was never, because the trend never changed. Remember what I said? You have to start, if you're going to be in an uptrend, you need to be gaining levels of support. You need to be constantly creating new supports and getting higher, right? Making the higher highs that you hear people talk about, but they don't approach it logically. Well, just on the weekly time frame here, where were you making higher highs? You weren't, right? You were just forming this wedge. And then you would see people start throwing on their indicators that were showing them that momentum was changing or accumulation was happening, or whatever. But those guys that were basing their trades off of that solely were not basing their trade off of the most important thing, the trend. Where are you in the trend? So they weren't, that's how I know they weren't doing that. They weren't paying attention to it. So it's not just, for your listeners that are getting involved in, and they're getting involved in trading and they're kind of gravitating towards indicators. There's nothing wrong with it. Just need to understand why you're even plotting them on your chart. Because you probably know this, Alex. At least I went through it, and most people go through it until they get out of it. They depend on the indicator to tell them when to make the trade or not. Which it just doesn't make sense, logically.
Also,
But
a lot of indicators are pretty much just a reflection of what is going on the
right,
with price, anyways, right?
right, exactly, exactly. I mean that, but no, what that's common knowledge. Like you can go and Google, and you're going to find plenty of people that tell you indicators are typically lagging. They're, just be careful when you use them. Don't rely on them. And people start coming out of they come out of that school of thought, and I don't want to say they're brainwashed, but it's herd mentality. People get involved. They find someone they enjoy or they think has knowledge, and then they sort of learn from that person. And depending on what type of truths they get out of it, if it's actually good information or if it's something that gives them a bad habit, I don't know. They don't realize that they picked up a bad habit or something that's detrimental to their trading in the long run versus actually something that's going to help them, over time, that when they start analyzing the chart. Because at the end of the day, no matter, it's an interesting thing I think about. I was thinking about it yesterday. Do you know why? I think the reason why people, when they talk about risk, I think they don't actually understand it.
For sure, agreed.
And it's not that you can lose money. It's everybody understands that part, and it's not that they're oversized. Everybody can figure that out. Like, yeah, obviously I can't take 100% of my account on every trade and expect to be profitable all the time because one trade could blow me out, right? So people get that part. But then what I say is, do you actually know how to look at the chart and understand what price is doing? Because if you don't, you're going to have problems. I mean, it's possible that you could trade, on times that you do understand. And I'd be lying if I say I always understand what's going on. I don't. Nobody does. I'm human. There are times when you miss things. It's just going to happen. But I can usually figure out what I missed based on just, simple price action rules, like understanding how trend works. What has to happen to no longer be in a trend. So, like, for example, people might say this was a trend, and they're not incorrect depending on how you look at it. However,
It
it
never
really
broke
is.
the swing high, didn't it?
Well, it really isn't a new trend, right? This is your trend. Did you make a swing low? No. So
No.
you're not in a down. You're technically not in a new downtrend yet. This is technically not a trend as well, even though it is, but really it's a retracement of your uptrend because you didn't make a new low here. So
You're going back and testing old untested levels.
Right. So here's your uptrend. Here's where that uptrend started from. So I'll just draw that out. Maybe it's more easy to see on the weekly for a second. But just the basic stuff that people never actually learn because I don't know, maybe it's just you got to think critically about it. But here's your uptrend. When you bounced from, that start of that uptrend, did you get below it? You did not. So you didn't make a new low. So you're technically not in a downtrend. This is just a retracement. So all of this move, let me just draw the arrow. All of this move down, and I'll make that like white or something all big so everyone that's watching can see it. All of that move down is just a retracement. So what is this bounce? It's just a retracement. This is all trend or price action that's inside until you actually make a new downtrend, which didn't happen until a couple weeks ago.
Wow.
So you see what I'm saying? So now what happens? Well, now you're starting to target parts of the trend from this point, from that point of view.
Holy shit.
Now, does that mean you're going to go all the way down here? I have no idea. I'm just saying I approach it with that understanding. Okay, now, so what do I do then? So now I got to revert my point of reference to the part of trend that makes sense, because I'm no longer in an uptrend here, which is why I was telling everyone, like, if you lose this November lows, you guys are going to you're going to see some real capitulation and some serious selling, because you're no longer in an uptrend. Like here, you're technically still in an uptrend. You're just retracing it until they lose it.
Right.
So,
Right.
so
I
now,
remember
you,
speaking to some months ago. Um, I think I was in your Discord, and I said to you, because I was trying to learn your concepts, and I said to you, well, I was trying to draw out levels as well. And I remember I asked you, like, if 55 goes, do you think we'll bounce at 55? And you said possibly, but you said to me that if 5K goes, then most likely we're going to go really far down. You never said a number, but looking at the chart, I thought to myself, you're talking about, like, 3K ish around there.
well, yeah, 'cause I mean, every day, man, I go on stream somewhere and I get the question, nope, what's going to happen with Bitcoin? And honestly, I tell them, I'm like, guys, my viewpoint hasn't changed. Like right now, I get, like, the other day, I get some questions where we're basically like where we are in terms of price right now. I get, what do you think is going to happen? Well, I'm basically, I say, this area, this area here of support, if we lose it, where are we going to go? Then I just start looking over here, like, well, what did we leave untested? And I would say probably this 3,200 spot is untested. And then, the big one that a lot of people are talking about is, like, around 3,000, which is tested, but it'll probably hold because it's support and resistance. So, that'll probably get tested, 2,900, 3,000. And then, okay, well, what else? Well, then I just continue working down the trend. I just continue working my way down. That's how it works. And I just keep watching. Okay, well, are we going to hold? Because this right here, in the last few days, the last week or so, we actually started gaining a level of support when we got above here. And then I was thinking, okay, we got above this high, so we're probably going to try to bounce. So what I would look to see is I want to see them hold. So if I were taking this trade and I was trying to get long, basically what I would do is set a stop below the swing low, and I would be long until it proves me wrong. And I know that if this swing low gets taken out, here's my next target, so on and so on. And I just keep working down, like, okay, we maybe get a bounce, if that were to happen, right? If this low gets taken out, maybe we come here, test, and continue down. You just see, something like that. And if not, if this holds, then what should we do? Well, we should be looking for, I'd look here, I'd start marking levels, and I'd start looking back up the most recent trend that I would be retracing. Okay. And then you could zoom out and see, does that make sense? Where is that in relation to this? Okay, yeah, it makes sense. It fits. And then I just work my way back through, and I go through smaller time frames, try to figure out, okay, well, what's tested? Well, maybe that's got tested, so I'll take that one off because we will probably go higher than that. So that's kind of the process that I use to understand how trend works. But, I get all the time, I get people asking me, like, what do you think is going to happen? And I try not to tell people.
The one thing go on,
I
sorry. I'll let you finish.
just try not to give them price levels too much because they may not understand what the hell I'm talking about. And I don't want them to, Dope said we're going to 3,000 and we're at 6,000, but I say, well, we'll probably still come down. And then they take a short because I said I think we're going to 3,000, and they don't actually understand what the hell has to happen. And then, let's say like we're back here in July, and then it bounces 3,000 points in their face, and they're like, "Well, Dope, you said 3,000. What the hell? You're wrong." You know how many people I said, I saw that when we were going through this, we were forming this wedge. I had so many people tell me that I was an idiot for thinking that we're going to go to whatever number, 4,000, 3,000, whatever you want to call it, because they didn't understand. They didn't understand, like they didn't understand trend, and they just thought I was an idiot. And you're just like, how do you? So I just like, well, why am I going to give you? It doesn't matter. I could tell you what I think, but you're not going to understand it.
Right, right. I mean, one of the things that unfortunately makes me a little bit quite sad about the crypto community is that a lot of people, just like me got in, made a ton of mistakes, and they have so much to learn. It's not only about learning about like what is Bitcoin going to do. It's about learning what is their risk. It is about learning, well, when someone says I think the price will go that way, and it doesn't. That doesn't make, like, when they ask you, that doesn't make that person wrong, because everything works in probabilities. And it's really, I feel like there's so much people have to understand. It's, first of all, nothing is binary. Second of all, they really need to learn, in my opinion, how markets work. They are so naive and inexperienced, unfortunately, and they get crushed, and they end up risking way too much on crypto because they heard stories about crypto millionaires, and it really saddens me. And on top of that, you have all these fucking scams going on. These ETH giveaway scams on Twitter and other shit, and shitty paid groups, and whatever else, other online casinos that are just ripping people off. And then you got the couple of exit scams and ICOs. It's just a freaking minefield. It is crazy. I mean, they are losing so much money, not only because they don't know how markets work and how to de-risk, but also because they get scammed. And it's just,
it's sad. It's sad, and I mean, I remember. I know Flood. I talked to him before, and we had a conversation about BitMEX, and yeah, I don't know. I'm saying this, but I don't know for certain. I was just saying it. If I were in the owner's shoes, and what I know about brokerages and exchanges and how they work and how they operate, I got in a conversation with them, and I said, I think that a lot of these crypto exchanges or brokers, whatever you want to call them, are trading against their clients, because why wouldn't they?
They're definitely shady. Yeah,
they're unregulated, and it's just, if 90% of traders lose, that's 90% more, roughly 90% more profits that I can put in my pockets. And because at the end of the day, none of us really know how long anything in terms of cryptocurrency is going to be around. Like, we can wishfully think that it's going to be around, and we very well could be right to say that. But I don't know the future 10 years from now. Like, who knew that Bitcoin was going to go to 20,000 when it was at a few dollars, and people were buying like Domino's pizza or whatever they were paying, back in the day. Like, it was just a fun, cool little thing. It was a fad. Like, nobody knows.
So why don't you, I mean, so much about markets, but you don't trade crypto. Why is that?
No. Well, so that's kind of what I was getting to, where it's not that I wouldn't trade crypto or that I'm opposed to it. I have traded it. I did play around with BitMEX. I did okay. I actually took, like, I was scalping. I took a small account, made my goal. I try to say I ended up making like 10x or 1,000% on Bitcoin, just scalping, just playing around. And but what I found was, for one, which all of you guys know, if you're using some of these crypto exchanges, and particularly BitMEX, which I know a lot of people at least used to use, I don't know now, but
they still use
it. For example, if I'm a trader and I'm in a position, I want to be able to get out of that position anytime that I can. And I know it's a headache. I've seen the memes where the overload thing, which is what I'm going to talk about. But why am I going to risk money with a platform or an exchange or broker, whatever you want to call it, where it doesn't allow me to get in and out of my trades anytime that I want? So you're limiting me, and essentially a lot of people have probably lost money because they can't get in or out of trades that they would like to get into with a market order. or quickly. You could do it with the limit order, but sometimes you're reacting to things that happen more quickly than you expected, and you have to get in quickly or get out quickly.
Right,
So,
right.
and I looked at it from their perspective, like, well, what would, and I have no idea. I don't know for certain. I just think, knowing what I know about
But there are
FX,
other exchanges too. You have
right,
Deribit, you have which is I think is Dutch owned,
right.
and I guess Bitfinex could be a little bit more risky because of all this
Hmm.
tether talk. But I don't know for sure.
Yeah, just
Um,
shadiness
isn't there
going
more
on.
money to be made? Isn't there more volatility because of the volatility? Isn't there just a chance
Well,
to make more money in crypto?
I mean, that depends on, it depends. So yes and no. I mean, for example, yeah, you could do well in crypto, but your leverage is not anywhere close to some of the leverage products that you can trade in the futures markets or the traditional markets. With some like natural gas, for example, is extremely high beta product, where it's a lot of guys don't a lot people in the crypto world don't necessarily understand margin and the difference of how I mean, it's the same concept, right? But just the subtle differences, where, like, in crude oil, one product, one contract of crude oil, or the S&P 500 or the Nasdaq or whatever, equity market, one contract in that is over $100,000 unleveraged. So you're getting
Hmm.
enormous amount of leverage, because a lot of these brokers, some of these futures brokers will let you trade with. You could trade the S&P with $500. Trading a product that's worth 100,000 plus for $500. Where can you do that? You can't do that in crypto. I mean, you can, but not even we're close, as far as I'm aware, right? Like, you could do
Right.
100x, but I don't know if it's quite the same
What are
margins
your
now. But
favorite? What are your favorite? I mean, what's your favorite to trade? What do you like to trade the most?
I've been trading a lot of crude lately because it's so volatile. I've been trading the Nasdaq a lot, or the NQ. I've mostly been trading commodity futures and equity futures. Um, but I mean, I keep an eye on other things. I took some trades on the Russell today and yesterday. The Russell's just a monster, which is the small caps, U.S.
Mhm.
markets. I'll
I
trade.
was sorry.
Go
Go
ahead.
on. Go on. Oh, please.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'll trade forex pairs from time to time. The euro dollar. I don't know. Uh, when I was trading on one broker for a while, I don't know if you remember that, or if you saw any of that
Yeah, I heard
stuff.
about that.
I was trading euro dollar on that, and yeah, I ended up getting to the top of the leaderboard there. And before they got shut down, the SEC shut them down. But I mean,
Nice.
it's all the same. Like, everything,
Well,
it doesn't really matter what you trade. Go ahead.
I was talking to Trader Main, who's also one of the people that I who taught me price action, and he does a lot of forex as well. And he was
Mhm.
saying that the reason he likes forex a lot, and even suggested that people are new, who are serious about trading, but still new in the markets, that they should also try trading forex because there's more historical data. So
Yeah.
there's like a lot more, and the price action is like cleaner, and I guess I don't know what that means, cleaner. But what are your thoughts on
Yeah.
that?
Well, so it depends. Yes and no. I would say, yeah, there's more. Obviously, there's more data, and the price action is probably cleaner. With your U.S. dollar pairs, it might be comparable to some of the exotic pairs. That aren't as liquid. So that's the issue. We have such illiquidity in crypto right now. When there was a lot more liquidity, going back in early 2018, your price action was a bit more clean. But now you're starting, people don't understand these, the wicks. They don't. I mean, I could talk forever about this stuff. Like, some of my pet peeves are hearing people talk about fat fingers, which I say they don't really exist. It's just part of the market making process, and the market's just being illiquid, et cetera. I mean,
Mm,
it's not that they don't exist; like, they do exist in some, some really illiquid products where you've got low float, I guess you would say. But yeah, it's I guess another big thing is the conversion. Like you're constantly in Bitcoin, where in Forex,
Cash.
you can get it in cash, whatever your currency is that you're wanting. Like in Thailand, you're using the baht. So if you were wanting to convert back to baht, you could get out of your trade, and your account would be sitting there, basically not at risk. It's at risk. It is at risk for price fluctuations of the baht, but it's unleveraged price fluctuations. Plus, if it moves 10 cents or whatever that number, whatever fraction of a baht it would be, is that correct? Is that what you guys
It's the
call it?
bot. Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
So if it moves, if the baht's value is devalued or increases by a certain amount, a marginal amount, it's not the end of the world for you. Like, yeah, maybe you're going to spend a little bit more on, food or something, but it's not like Bitcoin where you wake up and it's down 1,000 points and you just lost, say, 25% of your total account and you weren't doing anything. So so you have to square away that, like you'd have to hedge or whatever you want to do, or tether or however you manage that risk, that overnight
Yeah,
risk.
Maine had the same. Maine had the exact same point actually. That with Bitcoin, the market's 24/7. It's way more stressful. You have to look at what's going on, especially if you have spot. Do you have any spot crypto, or are you only cash?
I have not held Bitcoin. I get out of. I've been just any Bitcoin that I acquire has been going into fiat
Oh my
for the
God.
last.
I feel like I feel a bit. Why did I invite you on the show? I kind of feel bad about that now.
Yeah, no, I have not.
You're not even a maximalist. What's going on?
No. Well, until things change, if it's like I mean, I'm an opportunist. You're a trader, right? If you're really a trader, you should and you recognize. So I'm of the belief that no matter what the market is, they all basically trade the same way. That there might be some, volatility or beta will be different, but they're all relatively going to trade the same way. There might be some illiquidity where you get some illiquid moves, and like you see in crypto, but they're all basically the same. Like I'll show you. If you look on the screen, this is something I put out on a YouTube video a couple weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that not a lot of people. Let's go to all for a second. Not a lot of people actually realized. Like I went all the way back. The cool thing about this is you can go all the way back on TradingView back to the 1929 crash. And this is something that I showed.
Really? You can go that far back?
On the Dow Jones, you can. Yeah. So let's go to let's just use Bitfinex because it's been around a while. But we'll just go to the weekly. Well, we'll keep it on the daily here so it's a little bit more clean. But you can see this is the crash from 1929. Remember what I was showing you over here? Like when you lose support, right? When the stair step is over, the trend changes. Well, what did you do here? This was almost 100 years ago, guys. There's no crypto. There's no computers. There's nothing.
Holy shit.
There's nothing happening, that's computerized that you could say is manipulation or whatever. It's just people using vocabulary that they don't actually understand how markets work. And when you do understand it, you start seeing it. And not to say that I understand it completely or that I'm an expert or whatever. This is just how I approach it, but it looks pretty similar, right? I mean, it's a little different, but what I'm trying to get, I'm making this point because I'm trying to show you that markets do the same thing no matter when it happens, no matter what product it is. Here you have a stock from 100 years ago, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, the 1929 bubble, the biggest stock crash in the history of at least the U.S., and one of the most devastating in terms of wealth destruction. And then here you have Bitcoin, which is, something totally different, but it behaves basically the same way. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, for sure. I mean, what are your thoughts on Bitcoin itself? If you just look at the price action, a little bit more long term, maybe? Do you think? I think a lot of people are going to be asking this question, right? So maybe we should address this on this episode. What do you think is going to happen, like more long term? Because a lot of people probably bought in December.
Yeah. You know,
Like if you're going to look at market cycles in general from a price action perspective, how long do you think it could be before we go towards the all-time highs or 15K, those
right.
kind of levels?
Well, for me, so the kind of the first thing that needs to happen, right, is I need to sort of reclaim this area of support that we are just now losing. So in order for me to feel comfortable to even start considering this part of the trend, and I'm talking from a purely price action standpoint, because I'm not an expert and probably couldn't speak intelligently about any of the fundamentals and the technical aspects and the technology of Bitcoin and crypto itself, right? Like if you ask me just based on what I think, in my opinion, I would say it's all a scam. But you know, blockchain is definitely something that's real and useful. So that's probably not a scam. But in terms of like currency, when the ICOs were really popular, I
Well, in a
viewed
lot of
that.
ways, there is a name for what Bitcoin is. It's called, I forgot the name exactly, and I wish I had someone to Google this for me right now, but it's some kind of name of it's called a pyramid scheme, but it's like a certain name for a pyramid scheme where a very select few of people have the asset in the beginning, at the inception of the currency or whatever it is, and then more and more people, get a hold of it, and
Right.
that in itself effectively is really a pyramid scheme because how does it work? Well, the people got in Bitcoin
Oh,
early
Ponzi.
on.
You mean Ponzi scheme, right?
Exactly. Well, yeah, Ponzi, I guess in Danish we say pyramid scheme. Yeah, but
Okay.
yeah, right, a Ponzi scheme. And then, the people who got in late, they're the ones who ended up, paying off the other people, right?
Right.
So, in essence, despite the fact that I agree with you that blockchain has a lot of utility, Bitcoin and, currencies like that where at their inception only a select few people have them are effectively a Ponzi scheme. There's no way around that from a logical point of view, really.
Well, yeah, so kind of what we were saying, like what I was trying to say is that when you compare the ICO, what I saw, and I know I have some friends, I guess, or acquaintances that were involved. They were working for some of these companies or projects, whatever you want to call them, that were creating ICOs back in the day. They basically just said it's like they're going to pay me in monopoly money, and my hope is that the thing doesn't crater before I can sell, because they're restricted on how much they can sell at certain times. But when you look at, say, like the traditional world, it's no different. It's called ICO, and then you have IPO, so initial public offering or initial coin offering, whatever. That's where they're getting it from. And when you look at companies, some of these weed stocks, like the big one that I caught onto was it's called IGC. So what these companies do is they essentially want to raise capital, or for example, say like Facebook. Facebook goes public. They're essentially raising capital, and what they're doing is all the guys that were initially investing in Facebook, they need to get paid. They've put millions or billions or however, hundreds of millions, however much money they put into it, into their effort. One, they need to get their money back, and two, they need to make a profit from it. But at the least, they need to get their money back, right? So I don't know how much money is being spent in these projects, how many of them are legitimate or not. But I always looked at it as like, well, one, a lot of these ICOs you couldn't short, so it creates, which is really the reason why Bitcoin did what it did. There wasn't really a good way for the masses to short Bitcoin on the way up. So when you can't short, there's only one-sided trading. It creates, you get more extremes because there's less liquidity. And like, I think that if going in, a lot of Bitcoin would have been able, if you could trade the downside as well, you wouldn't have seen the type of parabolic move that we saw, that we did, like you see with penny stocks, or you see it's similar with penny stocks. You see
So are you
that.
saying that in the future now it's going to be much harder to get up to like, new all-time highs and
Well,
stuff?
well, I would think so. But then also you got to remember too, you have to consider, like, just from a fundamental standpoint, you have to create demand for anything for someone to want it. So how do you convince what has to, because the institutional guys, if they're getting in, whatever, if they're going to get involved, whatever, they have to have somebody that they can sell it to, which has to be guys like you and me and your viewers and everyone else involved in crypto that are retail. They have to have somebody they can dump it to, they can load it off to, that's how it works. Which is like whenever a stock goes public, say Facebook, when it went public, they're unloading shares, like you said, that they're sitting on, to the public, so that they can cash out and basically recoup their losses that they've spent to sort of start this company or to build Facebook or whatever other company you want. And then the hope is that after they build it, they think, okay, like the ethical scenario is they build a company that they believe will produce profits, and because they produce profits, its share price will rise, and then the investors get paid, right? Because that's why they care about investors. They've got to do something for the shareholders, because they're the ones that need to get paid. It's
Right.
so.
But
What I
one big difference between sorry to interject real quickly, but one big difference between the ICOs and the IPOs is that with the ICOs, it's just crowdfunding, isn't it? It's not even like a finished product. It's just so ridiculous that people can raise millions of dollars because other people are so willing to gamble away their money because they see these dollar signs and they see this mania, and they're just like, okay, I want to make money. I've made the same mistake myself last year, investing in shitty ICOs and just getting burned.
Right, because I mean, it's just like anything. I mean, it's just like why we're as humans, right? We're largely motivated by a material gain, or just a gain in general. No matter what it is we're doing, we're always looking for, whether we are conscious of it, you're always trying to minimize risk and somehow make a profit or a gain in whatever it is. Like if you go to the gym, you're trying to get stronger, or you're trying to get in shape, you're trying to make some kind of gain. Or if you're practicing at a sport, you're trying to get better. You're always trying to make progress. So it's just that maybe it's just an innate thing that it's just in all of us as humans. We're trying to progress, and then you see an opportunity that you think is
we're just
beneficial.
Greedy fucks. Yeah, that's what it is. We're just greedy.
Yeah, well, that too. Yeah. We definitely are. Because you don't. If you've been poor, you don't want to, and you've gotten ahead in life, and you're somewhat successful. Most people would agree they enjoy being successful than having to go through the struggle of not having money, right? So I mean, it's just innate. Like, we're greedy. We by nature we want comfort, and money is a comfort because of what it provides. So, but yeah,
would you say you're a materialistic person? Would you say you care a lot about money?
To some degree. I mean, like I definitely live a lifestyle much lower in terms of status uh than what I could. Like, I don't drive a flashy car. I don't live in a flashy house. Although I could go buy, I could go buy those things, but I don't.
Why
I
not?
don't.
You have the ability.
Right. I just don't value it. It's just like, I just never been into. I never been into. I just never really been into that. I mean, I'm happy.
What are you into? What do you like to do? Like, what are your interests?
Man, lately, honestly, I've just been into trading. Believe it or not, that's taken an enormous amount of my time, and I thought, I was like, man, is this kind of getting unhealthy? Where I'm just like, I just enjoy it that much. Where I'm like, I just, it's but
you must have some
outside,
hobbies or something, right?
Yeah, like outside of that, like I'll go, go to festivals or concerts. I was into rock climbing for a while. I'm a musician. I've been a musician, play the guitar. I've been a musician for, I don't know, 15 years. But all that's sort of gone like on the back burner once I got into trading, because for me, it was that important to me. Like trading was, I've kind of always been the person where if I'm going to get involved, I'm going to go hard at it, and I'm going to go pretty much all in. And,
Right,
maybe
right.
I kind of did that with poker, and then I got burnt out. It just, the swings like in poker was, it's just something that was hard. They
Oh
say
yeah.
what is it like? I think I read a study somewhere, at least in the US, that if your income varied by 20% in a month, it was extremely stressful for most people. Like they couldn't handle the majority of people couldn't handle a 20% swing. If they made 20% less one month, that they would be pressed to be able to afford their lifestyle, whatever it is.
Well, I
So
mean, with poker, it can vary a lot month to
yeah.
month, right? Like I used to play poker. I played poker professionally for 10 years, and pretty much, um, it in the beginning there was a rush, and it was great to make money, and you loved the game. But after about 5, 6, 7 years, 5, 6 years, it started to become more like a job.
Mm-hmm.
And you still got like the dopamine rush from making money, but it wasn't as good as like the feeling that you got when you made money was never as delightful as the negative feelings that you had when you lost money.
Yeah.
That fucked with your brain more, that fucked with your confidence more, and you just didn't really enjoy it as much anymore. And so the last 3 years of my poker career, it was just a job. It was just a job until I was like, okay, I'm done with it now. But it definitely wears on you. And how long you've been doing trading for? You don't get that feeling at all?
Uh, I mean, some days, when I'm having a bad trading day, yeah, but now I guess it's to the point to where I still enjoy it. Like it's not because it's always like a puzzle, right? You're always trying to figure out
So
the piece.
in poker, you could easily go like 55% winning days, 45% losing days. That could easily happen, but you would win over the year. What would you say, for you doing trading? What percentage would you say is your like winning and losing days?
Uh,
I mean,
Man,
even winning,
yeah,
even crushing poker players who are really, really good
yeah.
would not have meant much more than 60% winning days. Some would, but
Well, I'd say I haven't looked in a while, but I would say my win rate per trades probably sits around 80%. Like 8 out of 10 trades I make are usually profitable. But that doesn't mean anything on its own. Like you depend, the amount of profit obviously would affect that. But I've maintained a pretty high win rate in terms of trades. But if I size up somewhere, one bad trade could still make you negative for that day or that week or whatever.
right.
So I'd say for me, if I'm having more, if I start having a bunch of bad days in a row, let's say more than say 2 or 3, I'm doing something wrong. Like I am doing something totally wrong, at
Yeah, it
least in my
seems like the
approach.
strike rate seems like the strike rate in trading is definitely higher. Like people seem to get their trades right. The
Well,
the good the good traders
yeah,
tend to get their
right.
trades right more
Because
often.
the way I approach it, there's no luck involved in terms of, there's no variance in terms of, like you hear, I mean, and don't get me wrong, people are going to probably say like, what the hell is he talking about? Because you hear so often, well, one, I can't predict the future, right? But everything I do is pretty much an if then scenario. So if X happens, then I am pretty much confident based on some rules that I have that, if X happens, then Y is going to follow, whichever that is, right? So, and that pretty much happens. I don't know. it pretty much always happens. I mean, I can't say always, but it's pretty reliable, right? So
Right.
in poker though, you might have the best possible hand at that moment, and then something changes and you don't. So and there's really nothing you can do about it. You either just throw your hand away, or you make the call and you lose whatever you lose, or you win whatever you win. There's no there's less control, you know. There's more unknowns, I think, and that's the biggest difference in trading. Where yes, there's unknowns, but it's really the unknown is, I think the unknown in trading is just your lack of understanding, is what I believe.
Right.
It's sort of my philosophy. It's like the market did what it did, and I just didn't understand it because I missed something, and I approach it very logically. And then if there are times that I don't understand, then I don't know. I didn't understand. You know, I don't worry about it.
Have you been through periods, even ever since you became profitable and a professional? Like, have you been through periods in your trading career where you the market conditions changed and like volatility increased, decreased, things that you had to like adapt to, and you went on like a downswing for a while and stuff like that?
Oh yeah, yeah. That happens. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why you can go on downswings. But typically, like if you look at the equity markets and some of the futures markets right now, the volatility is insane. It's just insane, and you either have to be extremely confident to. Typically, what I do is I would size down. Like let's say I traded 10 contracts as a normal position size, then I would maybe go down. I'd go to half of that, or I would go even smaller, just because in terms of profitability, if I have that much more volatility, I don't need to take such a big position size to make the same amount of money, right? So if I'm in an area where there's low, like for example, in Bitcoin, when we had that period from say July until recently, like November or in October, you had very little volatility for the most part. You know, we stayed at like 6,400 forever. It seemed like, right, for months.
Right.
In that period of time, you could have traded a larger size. You would have had to size up to get the same kind of returns that you would have in a market that's highly volatile. So those are the type of things that change for me, you know, that I pay attention to. But in terms of what's happening, market structures basically doesn't change. It's pretty much the same. And then if like, for example, if I didn't like the consolidation that was happening in Bitcoin, the beautiful thing about trading is I don't have to just trade Bitcoin. I can go and find another market or another product that behaves based on the strategy or the style that I like to trade, you know, like a lot of penny stock traders, right? A lot of them are short sellers, and they wait for big parabolic moves, and then they try to short them on the way down. In that case, you have to continually find stocks that are getting pumped, so that you can short the dump.
Right.
So you know, and I guess that kind of happens in crypto with like the ICOs, where people are looking to altcoins in certain times, but I don't know if they're getting crushed in altcoins or really what's going on. But
well, altcoins, you can't short all of them because like only on BitMEX and maybe a couple others. But so people usually just end up like trying to time the pumps, you know, like different like on Binance or some of those other exchanges.
Yeah, that's you know, for me, that's kind of the changes that I make. And then but usually, like I said, when I have bad days, like for example, I haven't had a losing day in like 2 weeks right now. I would say I haven't had a losing day. I've had bad trades or losing trades, but it's been a couple weeks since I've had an actual red day. But you know, that can change, you know, and it happens. It's not the end of the world. The main thing is just make sure you can come back tomorrow and trade. And like, I don't, you know, if I'm losing sleep over a position, then something is wrong.
Are you usually doing like intraday trading, or are you doing like more swing trading? What is your like? What is your preference?
I do both. Well, I do more intraday for the website and the chat room that I run. Because those guys typically like the intraday stuff because they're, they're newer to trading and their account size are smaller, so they get more out of it, I think, because in the futures world, when you're trading futures, you have to maintain a certain level of margin or a certain level of money in your account to hold a position overnight. Well, if you're trading with a couple $1,000s, it's already difficult, but you're not even allowed to take an overnight position unless you have X amount of dollars in your account. So not everybody that joins, my chat room have that amount. So I just say, okay, I will do more scalping on screen or for them, and then I'll hold some positions. Like I have some stock holdings and stuff that I'm looking at, but it just depends. I'm not opposed to either. It just depends on the setup, what's happening with the chart or the price at that time, and does it make sense? So I do a little of both. Yeah.
How do you run your, so you have your course that you sell, and you have one basic and one advanced, and how do you run that? Because you have a Discord as well, right, for your members?
Yeah, so the course basically just it it's not like a recommendation of how you should do anything. It's basically what happens, like I said, back in the early Twitch days, I had a lot of people asking, will you teach me what you know? And so what I did is I basically just broke it down and tried to take you through the process of understanding how to approach looking at and reading price action on a chart. I don't really tell you about how you can set up a broker or the really basic things that you should be able to Google and figure out on your own, if you're not lazy.
Yeah.
So that's really how it's structured. So really it's structured and it should be taken as one whole course. But I ended up getting, and I may restructure it here soon. I'm looking at restructuring it just to make it more affordable by breaking it up. I structured it beginner advanced because not that it's actually beginner advanced. It's just that it makes it more affordable for people that maybe don't want to pay the full amount and up front. They maybe want to take their time and go through, and then maybe they save up or whatever reason, for whatever reason. So I split it up. But really, I called it beginner because it's sort of like the basic things you need to know before you can start getting into, you need to understand what trend is before you can get into like really dissecting how trend works, because it gets kind of complicated as you start approaching multiple time frames, things like that, or how support and resistance work. And a lot of that stuff is not stuff you're going to find on Baby Pips or Investopedia or wherever you go. So that's kind of how that's structured. Yeah. And then the Discord. So I have a Discord for those guys that, it's a chat room for the guys that go in the courses. And then I have like a more active room that's a monthly based subscription where I'm in there trading and we talk about, what, I have a live stream. They watch kind of what I'm looking at on the chart and I kind of explain what I'm looking at. But, it's never tell anyone you should do this or do that. It's just for those people that want to see what I'm doing day-to-day basis. And sometimes I don't, sometimes I'm not doing much. Sometimes I'm trading a lot. It just depends, but that's kind of how it's structured. Yeah.
How much crypto is traded in there? Like, and how many members do you have right now anyways?
Well, there's a lot less for the monthly subscription, a few hundred for the course room, and those guys, I'll go in there and try to answer questions from time to time. But there's a lot of the guys that have been there a while that kind of got a better grasp of what's going on that help out. So yeah, I'd say it just depends. The monthly things is newer. The monthly section is newer, so there's not nearly as many people in there, but there's a handful. So,
and then how many are doing crypto trading? Because I'm sure a lot of people want to do that. No.
For crypto, so I don't trade crypto. I will look at Bitcoin from time to time. I do have a section in there where people do converse with crypto, but I'm not super active with crypto at all. I might look at Bitcoin from time to time and drop a few charts in there. But I would say for the crypto audience, it's probably not like in terms of the course material, you'll be fine. But if you're looking at getting into say the monthly thing and you want to see more about what I do, it's probably not for you because I don't actively stream or trade crypto. I'm always predominantly trading futures and commodities and the traditional markets. So that's more beneficial for them. And I would say don't waste your time if you're just only wanting to trade crypto. The monthly subscription is not for you. If you want to learn about the chart stuff, it's for everyone. It shouldn't matter. Even your skill level shouldn't matter because I would like to think that there's a lot that even like an advanced trader may not know. So I mean, even me, like I try to learn from people. If I think they know something or have something of value, I'm always trying to learn and get better because there's just things that I may not know and that might make me money. So that's the,
Well,
that's the name of the game.
I think that's a really great attitude, to be honest, because on crypto Twitter especially, you always see these people who are like deleting their tweets when they're wrong, and they're always trying to like make sure that they're always right all the time, and it's just it's really not a great environment, so you kind of want to seek out people who are more genuine about when they're wrong and when they're right. And those are really the true traders, really, because if you're really focused on being right or wrong, you're not. You're probably just not experienced enough.
Yeah, you're not going to make it. I mean, to be blunt, if you're an ego trader where it's a weird thing, it's like to try to compare it to poker. I talked to Mike about this the other day, because he was a big poker player, and I was saying like, when you're playing poker and you're heads up with someone in a hand, and you're literally like you're trying to destroy that person mentally and take their and at the same time take their money, right? In trading, there's no one sitting across the table from you or across the desk or across the computer looking you in the eye and trying to scare you and make you think I'm going to take all of your money. It doesn't work that way. It's not like I always say, like you're trading against other people, but not to the degree and not to the degree that everyone thinks, but or that they assume. Is it zero sum game? Maybe not. Maybe it's not quite as that. It's not quite that simple. But the takeaway I take is you're really trading against yourself. Like for me, whenever I have bad days or a bad trade, it's really because of myself. I don't blame anyone else, or I'm not trying to. I get guys that come in. I get trolls. I get people all the time on the internet that they think that trading, like they have to be better than me, and I honestly don't care because my lifestyle, like it doesn't matter if you're a better trader than me, you're living your life, I'm living mine. What you do and how the decisions you make in your life have no effect, or the decisions you make in your trading aren't going to have any effect on what I'm doing, or they shouldn't. But it's just a weird thing where you just get kids, I guess, that are immature, that they're not mature traders, and they think that because you're on the internet or you're posting charts or whatever, that they should, like, that it's a competition to you, and it's really not. Like, at the end of the day, I'm still going to be trading whether or not I'm on Twitter or anywhere else. It doesn't change anything.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ego involved, and the one thing that, again, to maybe talk about some of the negative things about this crypto trading environment is that because of the amount of egos, is that people are so scared of being wrong, and they're like doing all this stuff about it's just, it gets very tiring because I see it a lot, and it's just, yeah, exactly that. And because of the fact that you can hide your results, that makes it even worse. You know what I mean? People showing that they're winning, and then they're not really talking about when they're losing, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I myself, 2-3 months ago, I was running really hard. I was doing really well, and I was on top of the world. I was like, okay, I've become profitable now. I was even talking about it in my videos. I was like, yeah, I've been profitable for a couple of months, but the last couple of months I've been getting crushed, So it really humbles you. And I think hiding from that, you're 100% correct, Dope. It is really a fight with yourself, a constant struggle against your ego, against your fears, against, and trying to control your emotions so you can do proper trading. It really is.
Yeah, you know what? One thing that I kind of realized for me, what helped me get over that, because that's, there's tons of books on that, and I kind of throw them all out, and I kind of say I call bullshit on a lot of it because, yeah, the psychology behind trading and emotions, it's there, sure, but for me, the reason I say a lot of that's just nonsense is because when you start getting understanding and knowledge of what the hell is happening on the chart and what to do, guess what sort of goes away? That fear or lack of confidence that you have, and then you start
Mm.
becoming profitable and making money. Whereas a lot of people, it kind of goes back to like, what do you actually know? What do you understand? Because when you don't understand, you make a bad trade. Part of that emotional distraught that you're feeling stems from your lack of knowing why you're wrong, right?
Mhm.
It's like in trading, I say all the time, you get in a trade, you place a stop. Do you know why you're placing a stop there? Like what reasoning is it? And then when your stop gets hit and you get taken out of the trade, you should be like, okay, I was wrong. Cool. At least I didn't lose my entire account now because I'm wrong. But 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 most people
I wish I
they
could say
look
that.
yeah, most people look at it like, well, uh, you know, I don't know why I'm wrong, but it sucks that I just lost money and I want to get it back. And then, they revenge trade or whatever. And the easiest way to fix that is go figure out why you're wrong. Like figure out what you did wrong instead of just making
Well,
an excuse or blaming a news release or blaming, whatever.
yeah, one mistake I was really making recently is because, well, I got, like, honestly, I got wrecked massively in February when Bitcoin went down, right? I had a long going, and my liquidation price was 6,300, and no, not using any stop loss, being the donk that I was at the time. And obviously went to 6K. I got liquidated, lost like 90% of my capital, and I've been trying to get back ever since. And when I went on this hot streak a couple of months ago, I started upping my position sizes. And what started happening was that I started closing my trades too early. I got scared. I got scared out of my positions that ended up should have gone my way and I could have made profits. And I was just playing scared money. And up until now, I was just like, I didn't realize the big mistake I was making. I was like, oh, but I need to work on my theory. Oh, but I shouldn't be so, I should let it go, the trade go for longer.
Yeah, why?
And
So
then
ask
as
yourself,
soon as,
why were you scared? Why were you
because
scared?
my position sizes were too big, I was risking too much money, you know?
Well, at least you figure out that that's a common thing too. Everybody thinks that people don't realize, man. And it's something that I try to show the guys in my room. Like I have a guy that just joined the room, and I'm not trying to brag on him. I mean, I'm happy for him, but he joined the room. He's been in the room a week, and he's trading. I'm not going to say his name, but he's trading. I think he's trading with about 10,000, right?
Mhm.
And he got in the room. He's trading futures, and his first trade he made like 2 grand, and I asked him, I was like, wait a minute. You have a $10,000 account and you made 2 grand. That's not unreasonable with the volatility, but I was like, by chance, I saw how big his trade was and he had how many contracts he took, and I was like, well, how big is your account if you don't mind me asking? And he tells me like she started with 10,000, and I was like, dude,
Mhm.
like you're trading way too big
Yeah, that's a bad idea.
yeah, and then so but what I was getting at is, so I think he kind of calmed down and he went down to a lot smaller size, and he's still grinding, and like he posted a really good day today. He probably made as much as I did today trading really small size, and I was like, hey, I was trying to get these guys to see like you don't have to trade crazy size to make a lot of money, because it's not trading is not about getting in and making millions of dollars in a short amount of time. If that's your mentality, you're not going to be around. You should, if that's your mentality and you somehow get lucky enough to make millions of dollars in a short amount of time, you should walk away. You should not just be done with trading, because that's not the mentality. It's a long-term thing. It takes so long to get even good at it, and even know what you're doing. So yeah,
I
that's
wanted to ask you one more question.
yeah.
I had it written down somewhere. I forgot about it, but now I found it. What was your biggest, now that we're talking about this kind of stuff, what was the one thing that was the hardest for you to conquer in your, evolution as a trader? The one thing that was so hard, like, that was the hardest for you to kind of, conquer. I can't
Yeah.
think of a better word.
I guess it's really two things.
What did you
'Cause
struggle with the most, until you finally?
yeah. Well, I don't know if there's one most, as I think they kind of go hand in hand, at least in how I approach things, where first was probably learning and understanding how the price works, and like how the charts, like the theory behind price action, and like what it really does. That took a long time, man, like years and years, and a lot of money to do, that I lost, and I spent learning, like significant amounts of money, like like I don't even want to say, because I lost a lot, right?
Well,
And
I'm in the same boat right now.
over years, like, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, man, what if I'd have done things differently? But it's no big deal. It's neither here nor there. It's no big deal. It's in the past, but that was coming up. I was learning. That was my education, my trading tuition, right? I didn't have anybody really sitting there holding my hand and saying like, hey, do
No
this, don't do
mentor.
that, right? And then the next thing was risk managing, and I think it's what everybody goes through: managing position size, managing risk, learning, so that, because they go hand in hand, in my opinion. Typically, here's how I think most people manage risk, and it's probably the most important thing. But
Well, they don't
I,
probably.
yeah, they either don't manage it, they just take a trade based on whatever reason. There's no plan, there's no risk management. Um, they're they're too scared. They get involved. They oversize. They take too much risk. Um, they're not even properly capitalized to even be considering trading. Like if you're trading with a small amount of money, you're not really a trader. Like, you're someone it's a hobby for you. You're learning, and that's nothing wrong with that. And you should, you know, to be totally honest, for most people, you should expect that you're going to lose that money. Like, I get that question a lot. How much should I start with? And I say, really, you probably shouldn't start. But if you must, and you want to go down this journey, start with either as much as you can or as little as you can, because
Oh,
depending on
interesting.
depending on yourself, because like the more you have, the more you can undertake, like the longer you can stay in the game. But to do that, you need to be able to manage it. So if you're a gambler, you probably shouldn't, if you know that about yourself, you should probably go with the smaller amount. If you're
Right.
if you're someone that you're really, you want to hold on to your money, and you're not a risk taker, you should probably go smaller and just take really small positions, and just kind of learn what the hell you're doing. And then until then, figure out, start sizing up. But I mean, really, the best way is, you know you got to figure out how to manage that. And a lot of that too for me was, I would say, the risk thing was always the hardest. And I mean, I know myself, like, I'm not afraid of taking big size and sizing up when I'm really confident in things. But at times, I look at it, I'm like, well, maybe that's not the smartest thing. So I do things to sort of, knowing myself, like I purposely uh do not take as much leverage as someone else may, or I limit that. Like, that way, I know, like, no matter what happens today, I'm going to be able to come back to the market tomorrow, and I shouldn't lose really any sleep over it.
Right.
It's,
Right.
but those two things kind of go hand in hand, because if you don't understand what's happening on the chart, you're going to have a hard time understanding when that trade's successful, like, or when it where to manage your risk or where to place a stop. Like a thing I hear a lot is they stop hunted me, which I kind of laugh at because I'm like, okay, dude, maybe, but probably not. Like is it a thing? Sure, I guess, but it's more likely that you just didn't know where the hell to put your stop. And a lot of things that what I notice with new traders, man, is that they don't take responsibility for anything. You know, they just blame it on an outside thing instead of taking full responsibility. You placed your stop at this place and you got taken out of the trade only to have it reverse and your trade would have worked. That's the big thing people get pissed about. And they believe that the market's against them. And the most likely outcome is they just don't know where to place a stop. And they're, you have to learn these things. So, but what do? They immediately blame something else aside from themselves. That's a big step that you have to figure out, like you have to accomplish and overcome.
Is just take responsibility.
Yeah, just to even get anywhere in the trade, because dude, you can make great trades and start really learning how the market works. But if you don't take responsibility of your actions and like, okay, you decided to take this trade, dude, you decided to take this kind of position size. You knew that this was possible, but you ignored it, or for whatever reason, you decided to move your stop, or you decided to do this or do that. It's all you. You made those decisions. No, unless like someone was sitting in front of you at your desk with a gun to your head saying you need to take this trade, you're responsible. It's your responsibility, right? But
for sure,
if you're constantly out there making an excuse for, or trying to find an excuse of, oh well, Trump said this, or the Chinese government banned and they said this or this or that, and whatever explanation, whatever excuse you give has no bearing on your decision to take the trade and how you managed it. Only you. You might listen to what someone says, or you allowed something to influence you, but you're still the person that's responsible for it. And if you never get to that point to where you sit back and say, okay, I did something wrong here, I need to figure out what I did wrong, and to go down that process, which is not going to be an easy process. I'll just give you fair warning. But hopefully it's easier for you guys than it was for me. But it's not easy, because now you're having to really dissect it and start thinking critically about what the hell is happening. And it's not a overnight thing. And it took me years, and it's going to take most people years to get to that point. And I still make mistakes, man. I still miss things, and that's okay. It's part of the game. But those are the two things. Like, I don't know what, or the three things, I guess. I don't know what's more important. What was the hardest for me? Probably because they kind of all fit together. But it's all hard, man. Trading's not easy, dude. If it was, everybody could do it, man. Everybody would be doing it, and everyone would be successful, and no one would quit. And the success rate would be, you'd have so much more traders, man. All of it's hard, dude. Anybody that tells you that trading is easy is lying to you. It's probably the hardest thing you're ever going to do.
It's hard
if you stick with it. Yeah,
it is fucking hard for sure. I've learned. Hopefully, it'll be easier at some point. Listen, Dope. Man. Thanks so much for coming on. I really, really appreciate it. It was an honor to have you on, and I'd love to have you back on sometime for sure, because I'll be doing this all the time. I really enjoy this kind of podcast stuff. I love talking to people like this.
Yeah, for sure, man. I enjoyed being here. If any way I can help you guys out or anything, just let me know. You know how to get a hold of me. And yeah, man, I had a good time. I like at the least just telling people like what to expect. At the least, if you listen to this, I hope that the guys that hear this and that have been listening now, or that are going to hear it, months from now, and you're thinking about getting in trading, I just hope that you listen to it and take it for. It's not easy, like really make the decision. Like, is this what you want to do? So. yeah, man, I appreciate being here. It was good. I
Yeah,
enjoyed it a
man,
lot.
and people like you are the ones who are, able to help some of all these newcomers, especially because of the crypto and Bitcoin
Mhm.
stuff. Able to guide them because it is a fucking minefield out there right now.
That's true. That's so true, man. I mean, I try to. Uh, I try to. I hope to. That's kind of the goal, and it doesn't always work out that way, but that's the plan anyway. So for sure.
All right, guys, remember to check out Dope Trades, on in the description. There's links to his course. Definitely follow him on Twitter and TradingView and YouTube. And all right, Dope. I'll talk to you soon. And everyone else listening, thanks for tuning in.